For the rest of us, as the tides come by, we're going to be in the book of Mark today. Mark chapter 5 specifically. And I want to say happy Father's Day to all the fathers. And look, I know there's some that you may not have had biological children. I totally get that. But you have been entrusted with somebody in your life, somebody that looks up to you. So as a spiritual father, a stepfather, whatever it may be, we want to say happy Father's Day to all fathers because we have a crucial role to play in the kids' lives that God entrusts us with. And it not always works out. Our kids not always do what we want them to do, but we still have the role. And what I want to do is take a look at an unlikely source for our Father's Day sermon. And we usually have Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. That says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." And that word provoke means that you arouse anger in your kids. You're badgering them. God says, don't do that. Fathers, don't be a putz. Stop being provoking to your kids. But also in Colossians 3:21, Paul says on another letter, says, "Fathers, do not antagonize your children. Don't challenge them in a negative way to rise up, but instead encourage them because they're going to be discouraged." So those are the two famous passages. Let's not be jerks to our kids, fathers. And don't antagonize your kids to the point to where they resent you. Instead, encourage them because they'll be filled with discouragement. So we have a powerful, influential role with that. But I want to take a look at Mark chapter 5, and I want to take a look at Jairus. Jairus. You see, Jesus is crossing the place, and he's coming back, and people are all wanting to be around Jesus at this point. And in Mark 5:21, it's page 672 in our free Bibles. If you don't have one, you can go ahead and grab one. We pick up where Jairus is coming to him because of a situation that is dire. And for fathers specifically, I'm going to be looking at, but please plug in moms, everybody else, is the situation is beyond your control and you have no hope. That's what we pick up on. Jesus is popular. Everybody wants to be around him. And in verse 21, we pick up, "When Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed by the seashore. And one of the synagogue officials named Jairus came, and upon seeing him, fell at his feet and pleaded with him earnestly, saying, 'My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her so that she will get well and live.'" Jairus is a synagogue official. He's somebody of influence and somebody of affluence. So he's a pretty popular person. But notice Jairus' posture. He humbles himself and he seeks out Jesus desperately. And he pleads with him for Jesus to step into a situation because his power has left him, in the sense he can't do anything for his daughter. Now, Luke records us, when he records this story, that Luke says this is his only child. He doesn't have any others. A synagogue official comes over to Jesus, searches for him, seeks him out, and is begging Jesus to step in and do something because Jesus is his only answer. You see, Jairus was desperate for Jesus to do something in his child's life that Jairus could not do. He is now the passive recipient. His daughter is slipping away from him physically, and all he can do is go to Jesus and try to find this guy because that's his only hope. All the influence, all the money, all the power, all whatever it is means nothing. And he's looking for Jesus. The Oxford Dictionary defines desperate as a feeling showing or involving a hopeless sense that a situation is so bad as to be impossible to deal with. Fathers, when was the last time we were desperate for Jesus to engage our families and children to work a miracle because the situation is beyond our control? Think about that. We raise our kids, like Paul says, hey, raise your kids in your home. Train them up in the discipline of the Lord, and we do, to the best of our ability. They get to a point and they're tween years, teen years, going on 25, somewhere in that time span, they think that they're older than they are. They can accomplish the world and conquer it. And they begin to make decisions that reflect nothing of family values. You're scratching your head and you're wondering what in the world is going on. But when was the last time that we desperately sought Jesus instead of us trying to do damage control and we're trying to gather everything in? But have you gone to Jesus desperately? Have you fallen down before him? 2 knees, not just one. 2 knees surrenders everything. When Jairus is bowing down before Jesus, he's acknowledging somebody superior is here more than I am. And he's pushing at him. He's, Jesus, I got nothing else. I need you to step into the situation because this is my only child. I can't do anything. I need you to do a miracle. Man, when was the last time that we were desperate to where we closed our door, went to our bedroom, went on a drive, and we just poured out our heart on behalf of our kids? Notice Jairus' the little girl's mom, Jairus' wife, is not here. She's back home. I don't know how long the distance is, but the father took the lead on this. The father took the lead. This is interesting. The word that's highlighted there, the phrase pleaded with him earnestly, is a double emphatic. Literally, the word pleaded means pleaded earnestly. It's like one word. So he pleaded earnestly with him earnestly. You get the sense of desperation. Jesus is his only hope. That's all he has. And in verse 24, Jesus says, okay. He goes off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. Jairus is in a time-sensitive situation. Please come. My daughter is about to die. It's my only child. I need you. Jesus says, okay. He's going. The crowd rushes. Now, verses 25 through 34, it's an interruption to the text, but it is a model that Jairus also needs to see. Jairus is panicking. Come to my daughter. No interrupt. Jesus says, okay, let's go. And then all of a sudden, this woman comes out of the crowd, a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years and had endured much at the hands of many physicians and had spent all that she had and was not helped at all, but instead became worse. After hearing about Jesus, she came up in the crowd behind him and touched his cloak. For she had been saying to herself, if I just touch his garments, I will get well. And immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that power from him had gone out, turned around in the crowd and said, who touched me? Who touched my garments? His disciples said to him, you see the crowd pressing in on you, and you say, who touched me? And he looked around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be cured of your disease. Kind of an interruption. Jairus is like, what are you doing? Stopping. Like, my daughter is about to die. And this woman, everybody's thronging around Jesus, probably pushing on him. He says, all right, stop. Somebody touch me. They're like, yeah, no duh. Everybody is touching you. He says, no. Somebody touched me with intentionality. Think about that. How many people were going through some things and everybody's touching and grabbing Jesus? Nobody's being healed. But somebody came up with desperation and intentionality. And as Jesus, she's reaching and touching more than likely his tzitzit, his tassels. And she touches it and she goes, if I touch it, I know I'll be made well. Jesus stops. Who's the one who just touched me? Out of everybody, one touched him with faith, with determination. And he stops. Can you imagine Jairus in panic mode? Like, and by the way, when an unclean woman who has an issue of blood that's flowing, she's unclean. According to the Levitical code, every time she goes into a crowd, she has to cover her mouth and yell, unclean, unclean. So everybody scatters so that she doesn't touch anybody else to make them unclean because they can't go to the temple. It's this ongoing, everybody's given up on her. Her physicians gave up on her. Everybody did. but she hasn't given up on Jesus. She's searching for him, and she's like, through the crowd, if I'm just going to reach, I'm going to just touch real quick. And Jesus stops. Why? Because Jesus desired to know her personally. Personally. Everybody's touching him. Jesus says, no, somebody touched me with faith. And I want to know who it is. So everybody stop. Everybody's looking. I don't know what's going on. She comes from the crowd, comes forward, and she said it was me. Instead of Jesus rebuking her, you are unclean, so you touching me just made me unclean. Actually, in the power of God, it reverses. When the defiled touches the King Almighty, his cleanliness cleanses you. It went the opposite way. And notice, he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Man, your faith, her trust in God made her well. Now, does this mean that, Pastor, if I ask anything in Jesus' name, I'm going to get it because that's what I've been taught or that's how I've been raised? No. If my kids are going through things and I'm praying for them and I'm lifting it up, is God going to answer them on my time frame? No. Not all the time. If I'm going through stuff medically and if I pray to God with all trust and all faith, is that guarantee God is going to answer on my time frame? No. And Mark gives us an alluding to, in Mark chapter 1, if you want to turn there, verses 35 through technically 39, Jesus is healing again. He's healing people, and everybody is coming to him, and it gets late at night, so Jesus goes in and he rests. He sleeps. Early in the morning, he wakes up. He makes time to go commune with the Father. He prays. He talks with him. And the disciples come around and says, what are you doing? We got a crowd. Mega church is about to happen, Jesus. We got a crowd that is lining up, and we need you to come back because they're lining up all the sick and everybody that's possessed. This is day 2. Jesus, you're going to get famous. So Jesus says, if you look at this, he says, verse 38, he said to his disciples, let's go somewhere else in the towns nearby so that I may preach there, for this is why I came. In other words, Jesus doesn't return to the place where the crowds are lining up to be healed. He leaves them there. And he goes somewhere else. So Jesus healed quite a few people, absolutely. Jesus also left quite a few people not healed. I don't know why. I think maybe because when we come to Jesus only for miracles and we're not walking with him, when it's just do this for me, then I will, then Jesus will move in a different direction. Because he wants you to walk with him. He's not just there to be your puppet. Do whatever I want. Perform whatever I want. That's not it. So this woman that we know, she has faith, the same faith and the power that Cornelius is going to need to engage. Because everybody's given up on her. She hasn't given up on Jesus, and she prays desperately. And I honestly think as she interrupts this, number one, God will heal on his own time frame, so don't be trying to throw God in your own schedule along that line. But number 2, Jairus is looking at somebody that is modeling the faith that he probably is desperately trying to hold on to. He's trying to, but his little girl is about to die. So then we pick up. While he was still speaking, people from the house of the synagogue official, Jairus, saying to him, your daughter has died. Why bother the teacher further? Your daughter has died. Finality. Why are you bothering Jesus? The reality of your greatest fear, Jairus' greatest fear. I've been trying to get Jesus from point A to point B. It's time sensitive. I can't do anything for my child. It's beyond me. I need Jesus to step in. Who's this woman that just interrupted me recruiting him? I got first dibs on him. Like, you're coming with me. And all of a sudden, no, hey, she's dead. How? Was it 20 yards? Was he a mile? I don't know how close Jairus was to his home. Notice the finality of what they are telling him. You can't bring her back to life. You cannot make any decisions for her. You can only watch now and experience the heart-wrenching reality. Your daughter is gone. Literally, she's dead. This would cause a sense of hopelessness in the situation. And then they follow up, why bother Jesus any further? In other words, the reality of the situation begins to plant seeds of distrust. I went to Jesus, I sought out Jesus, I called him, he's coming, and now I'm getting this news. Stop pursuing Jesus. Stop bothering Jesus. Stop praying to Jesus. Stop. Here's the reality. Deal with it. But Jesus is an eavesdropper. Notice what he says. But Jesus, overhearing what was being spoken, intercepts this and says to the synagogue official, do not be afraid, only believe. So what the people are relaying to Jairus is reality. You can't do anything for your child now. Okay? Stop bothering Jesus. Jesus says, whoa, wait a minute here. Don't be afraid. Only believe. He's speaking directly to Jairus, and the word to be afraid is the word fear. It's to be in an environment or a surrounding of anxiety and apprehension. In other words, your focus is no longer on Jesus, your focus is on the chaos. Think about that. Jesus steps in and says, don't focus on the chaos. Don't focus on what's happening in front of you. Only believe. The word believe there means to trust and to keep on trusting. Don't just trust once. You got to trust and keep on trusting. It's this idea that you are willingly placing your trust in someone greater than you. So fathers, parents, for our kids, our families, our situations, how many times do we want to focus on the chaos and not focus on Jesus? How many times are we tempted to be paralyzed by the fear, the reality? Because as Christ followers, we don't ignore reality. We're not going to be like, well, I'm going to pretend like I've never seen that. I'm pretending like that's not going on in my home. No, come to reality. See the situation of what's happening, but focus on Jesus. Because he can do miracles far beyond you. Far beyond you. Don't create an environment where the glass is always half empty. You get a bigger glass, you get an 8-ounce glass, it's at 4 ounces, it's half empty. Well, here's a 16-ounce glass. Look at those 8 ounces in there, still half empty. How about you shift your perspective and say, Lord, thank you that the glass is half full. Because if I'm breathing and my kids are breathing and my family's breathing, that means there's still time for you to do a miracle in their lives, even though they are far, far, far from you. I don't want to create an environment where everything I look at half empty, definitely empty, half empty, all the way through. It's like, no, Lord, give me a perspective that changes to acknowledges reality. Here's the real situation. But I don't want to live in a state of anxiety and fear and chaos and all these things. I want to focus on what counts. All right, John, if you want to do that, I need you to lock eyes on Jesus and stay there. Because he's going to walk you through some things that you're never going to want to volunteer for. But here is the reality of the situation. But I don't need you to move in fear. I need you to move in trust. Jesus says, do you trust me to walk you through this? It seems hopeless. I know it does. And actually, humanly speaking, it is. But thank God I worship a living author of creation that doesn't give up on people. He didn't give up on me. He's not giving up on your kids. You don't give up on your kids, and you don't give up on other people. We need to stop living in a state of sabotage and chaos and make sure that we're focusing on what matters. Focus on Jesus. Don't be afraid. Believe. Let's continue. And he allowed no one to accompany him except the inner three, Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the synagogue official, and he saw commotion and people loudly weeping and wailing. And after entering, he says, why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep. Now, these are professional mourners. In the ancient culture, they would have had professional mourners as they would have saw death approaching. So it's not that mom and dad are mourning. You have other people that either they have paid or some family members, they brought some professional mourners in wailing, and you get the description. It's not just them being like, oh, we're sorry. It's this whole procession. It's this whole like, oh my God, oh, it's this loud weeping, and Jesus says, shut up. You're causing all this distraction, all of this commotion. The child is not dead, but asleep. And notice how they respond to Jesus, and they begin laughing at him. Jesus says, you don't need to draw attention to yourselves in this situation. The child is not dead, but asleep. In other words, the child is not beyond the impossible. Now they're looking at it like, nope, she's dead. We know she's dead. But Jesus says, nobody's beyond my power. Nobody's beyond my power. Wow. Making a commotion. How many times when we go through things in life do we draw attention to all the bad things? Throw it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to do it. And it's all the bad, half empty. Everything's half empty. And Jesus says, stop. Focus on me. I need you to focus on what is going on and focus on who you are in the presence of. That's the author of creation. And Jesus walks with me and he talks with me. And it's a living, vibrant relationship that Jesus is always saying, walk with me, follow me. Follow me. Stop living a life of distraction. Stop focusing on the chaos in front of you and all the stuff that people are inviting. People that are inviting. Notice the rest of verse 40. So Jesus puts them all outside. I love it. So at the beginning of verse 40, they all begin laughing at Jesus. But when you trust Jesus, he's going to walk you through the naysayers. They might be surrounding you saying, have you not acknowledged the reality of the situation of what's going on with your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, your brother, your uncle? Do you not look at this and you have the faith that God's going to change this addict or this drug addict, this alcoholic, this pornographic addict, whatever it may be? They've been doing this for decades. And you think that, okay, Jesus, naysayers. And Jesus says, look at this, if he can resurrect a dead child, and he resurrects Lazarus and the widow of Nain's son, Jesus in the resurrecting business, nobody's beyond the power of Christ. But you're going to walk into a sea of naysayers that are inviting you to just come and sit with us, with the reality, stop bothering Jesus, come and sit down, and we'll all pout together. It's sad. But verse 40b, I love it. And then Jesus puts them all outside. Get out. He takes along the child's father, the mother, his own companions, and he enters the room where the child was in bed. And taking the child by the hand, he says to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. And immediately the girl got up and began to walk, for she was 12 years old. And immediately they were completely astonished. Wow. Mom and dad are there. The inner three are there. Their daughter who is dead is there. Mom and dad can't do anything. But Jesus is teaching them a lesson that when God is near, the power of the impossible can come in and intersect anybody in Jesus' timing. Remember Mark 1, 38 and 39. Jesus chooses not to heal everybody. So I'm not saying this is naming it and claiming it and you're walking away, but Jesus will engage when he does, and nobody is beyond the power and saving grace of Jesus. They were completely astonished. This word here means to be utterly amazed, to where you're about to lose your mental faculties. You cannot believe it. The reality was, child's dead. The new reality is that Jesus resurrected her. And your mind is grappling like, I thought this was beyond hope. When was the last time we were praying and pursuing Jesus to be astonished at what he's going to do? In order to focus on Jairus, when was the last time we were praying for our kids? Lord, astound me. Because to be honest, I have about 1.5% faith that this is going to change. The repeated habits of everything and the rebellion and all these things. As I mentioned before, as parents, we transition. from being a parent of authority over our kids when they're young. You tell them what to do. You quote your parents who quoted their parents. And as you were a kid, you hated it. Don't do this. Why? Because I said so. You gave no explanation. Don't do this. I'm like, okay. So we were a parent of authority. We had a position of authority. But there comes a point, and there is no objective age, where we transition to become a parent of influence because we've lost the authority. It's a natural transition in your child's life. And sometimes we think we're still authoritative, but you're not. You're a helicopter dad or a helicopter mom, lawnmower mom, whatever you want to call it. And you may be exasperating your kids. That is a possibility. But when we have that transition, we become influential. And we want to be the people that our kids come to say, hey, mom, hey, dad, this is what I'm going through. Well, that's not how we raised you. I know. But I want to come to you for advice upon the situation, whatever it is. But it's when they're the prodigal and they're running headlong. When was the last time that we were praying to Jesus in order to be astonished? Lord, I want to be astonished. I need you to rock my world, turn it upside down. I could tell you that when I graduated, when I was in high school, when I graduated, I was not reflecting any kingdom precepts. And I didn't care. Rebelled, went into the military, did everything that you shouldn't be doing. That's what I did. But I had a praying mom. And I had a dad that was in and out of the picture. But my mom was faithful. Everybody else would have given up on me. Look at a drunk. Look at all these things that this guy is doing. Somebody didn't give up on me. So, the encouragement to fathers and mothers and everybody else, if God didn't give up on me, you don't have the authority to put a period where Jesus is putting a comma. You need to continue to leverage your faith and pursue Jesus desperately like Jairus. Passionately and with intentionality like the woman. And even though the reality of the situation shows this is an exclamation point, we're not even talking a period. It's done. Jesus can still step into that and re-alter that sentence and put a comma there. And because they thought that the period was the finality, and Jesus said, nope, that's not going to happen, they were utterly amazed that something beyond their control, Jesus still stepped into the situation and worked a miracle. The only power the Father had in the mother that's now introduced was prayer. That's all they had. There was nothing else they could do. Nothing else that they could do. So fathers, I want to give us three things and I want to give us a challenge. Number one, fathers, intercede for your children. Notice it's Jairus that comes to Jesus. It's not the mother. The synagogue official, the one that has the most reputation, he comes to Jesus and he bows two knees, not one. He bows both knees because he acknowledges that Jesus is more superior than he is. And he intercedes, my daughter is about to die. Fathers, when our kids are wandering or our kids, whatever they are, if they're here, if they're in different states, no matter what's going on, we need to take up the mantle. It's not just our wives' job to intercede for our kids. It is our job. We have the responsibility to step in the gap. The word to intercede means you stand in the gap between God and your child and you hold it. And you're there praying. I need to step into my children's life. Whether they're walking with Jesus or whether they're not walking with Jesus, I need to be interceding for my kids. Or if God has brought children to you, young adults, and you are the father figure, you're the spiritual father, that's your responsibility to step in. Number two, focus on what Jesus can do in your child's life. Stop focusing on what he can't, what you think he can't. Focus on what Jesus can do. What are the good things in your child right now that the devil might have sabotaged and hijacked? But Lord, I know that you can work a miracle because they're still breathing and they're still walking. And if somebody didn't give up on me, I know that you didn't give up on them. I'm not going to give up on them. Lord, I'm going to pray with intentionality for you in this area to do something miraculous. Because to be honest, I feel like I've lost the authority and maybe the influence. Maybe things in my past that I can't undo that my kids hold against me. Or maybe just a situation that they are in, you're like, there's like no reciprocal response here. All I have is prayer at this point. But Lord, I know that you can reach beyond this place, and I know that you can turn the prodigal's heart back to you. If you remember the story of the prodigal, for kids that have wandered, they're walking down a path that you never raised them in, but that's what they're doing. The prodigal's father never sends servants after him. The son goes and he stays behind and he watches him disappear into the horizon, praying, hoping. He never sends spies. Hey, check up on my son. And when he's self-destructing, kind of help him out a little bit. He goes. And it's when the prodigal comes to his senses, then his repentance is genuine and he returns because he hit rock bottom. And the father is always on the porch waiting to see the horizon, to see if his son will break that horizon. And Jesus says the father in the story is your Father in heaven. And you're the prodigal. We are the prodigal. So if God is not giving up on you, don't give up on your kids and don't give up on yourself. Lastly, let's entrust our children's future to Jesus. As they grow, God will intersect them, but it's the responsibility of our children to acknowledge or dismiss whatever that is. We can always be influential, pointing them right back to Jesus. I want to point you right back to Jesus. I haven't got all the answers, but let me point you to Jesus, because what you're doing is not smart. It's going to lead in destruction, and it's going to hurt really, 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 really bad. And who knows? You might have been going down the same path that your child is going down for those that are wandering away. But bottom line is you got to stop micromanaging and start entrusting them to God. Lord, work within them. Help me to come alongside them and walk with them, to let them know that you're not alone in this. You know, acceptance does not mean approval. You can accept your kids for who they are, destructive, whatever it is, if that's where they're going down. Except you love them where they're at. That doesn't mean that you approve of their decisions. But, Lord, I'm learning to entrust constantly. Tell me when to back off if I'm hovering too close. But help me to not think I'm backing off and that's a reason for me to disengage. Because my challenge to us in Father's Day is, fathers, we need to engage our children. Engage them. Even if they're pushing us away, even if they're doing this or they're doing that, it's not a reason for us to be like, well, all right, I'm just going to walk away from this. No. In a society today that's saturated with social media, our children are under vast amounts of pressure and vast amounts of stress. And they're bombarded constantly. And if anything is caught on social media, they can never escape it. It gets replayed over and over and over again. For those of us that are 35 and older, where you had an issue, you had the weekend to think about it. And then hopefully if you return back to school, everything kind of died down. You're just like, hopefully they didn't remember that. It's on repeat mode for all the world to see today. There's a constant pressure. So we need to engage. And we need to have those hard conversations that maybe nobody else wants to have. But that's our role. God has entrusted kids to us, our children, and fathers have a very powerful, influential role. And all we can do is raise them, disciple them, love on them, point them to Jesus, that hopefully when they turn that age and they begin to make decisions on their own, hopefully it glorifies Christ. There's no guarantee that it will. They may be a prodigal. I love to tell my kids this. It brings me humor, and I think it's humorous. But tell them when they turn 18, it's like, congratulations, you're an adult. Now your decisions come with legal consequences. Prior to that, well, let me go ahead and call your parents. Hey, when you turn 18, there's no guarantee they're going to call. So think twice before you do something that you may regret, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be here for you. But there is a shepherding role with that. And so if you're a father, spiritual father, stepfather, whatever it may be, engage. Engage today and encourage them. Send them a text message saying, hey, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. I love you. I'm excited for whatever is going on. Just do something to where they know that they're not on their own. Especially if they're living a life of rebellion and they know that you don't approve of it, they may tend to think you want nothing to do with me. How about you reverse that and you say, I want to be part of your life and I want to help you walk with this. Man, God didn't give up on us. Paul says that while we were yet in rebellion to God, sinners, God sent Jesus to die for us while we were yet sinners, not when we try to get it all together. At least there's an effort there. The description is we were running away from God, and that's when God said, all right, now is the time. So if he hasn't given up on us, don't give up on your kids. Continue to pray for them and engage with them. Please bow your heads with me. Father, we come to you on this Father's Day, coincidentally. And I want to thank you, Lord, for never giving up on me. When everybody else gave up on me, I gave up on myself. You didn't. You pursued with a relentless love that drew me back to you. Your word convicted me, but Lord, it was your kindness that drew me to repentance. So Lord, I pray for fathers here that we would be encouraged. We don't have to be perfect, but we need to engage. Instead of being discouragers, help us to be encouragers. And when our kids are rebelling, Lord, or struggling with something, help us to stand in the gap, intercede. Help us to focus on what you can do in them and through them. And let us pray toward that end. That's what you can do. I can't do that, but I can pray. Lord, you can move in a dead person's body and call them back to life. So I know that you can move into the hearts of our kids and our parents and our uncles and everybody else, and you can draw them back to you. Lord, help us to trust you with the plan that you have. May not be our plan. And Lord, if there is anybody here that does not know you, and maybe they are the prodigal, right now they're listening and they're like, I don't even have a relationship with God. Lord, I pray right here, right now, that they would call upon you. And they would ask you, Lord, come into my life, save me, rescue me, deliver me, because I'm destructing. I want to follow you, Jesus, and I need you to make me new. I believe that you died for me. I believe you died for my sins, and you rose again the third day. And although I don't understand everything, I believe you are the only way, the truth, and the life. And I trust you. And I surrender to you today because I want to come home. Father, if there's anybody here that has prayed something similar to that, would you radically transform them? Make them new, that the world will see this prodigal has come home. And Lord, as we engage our kids, help us to not put a period where you're putting a comma. Help us walk with them, love on them, and point them to you. We ask this all as disciples of Christ in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you. I pray you guys have a phenomenal Father's Day. And next week we'll see you. But until then, be the hands, feet, and mouthpiece of Jesus and shine bright all that Jesus has done for you. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.